Welcome to the African Alliance podcast, the Brilliant series, brought to you by the Brilliant Consortium's Community Engagement and Advocacy Workstream. This series introduces you to the scientists, researchers, and community activists driving innovation and social progress across our partner sites. In each episode, we'll hear from those on the front lines, whether they're uncovering groundbreaking scientific discoveries or working to empower communities through grassroots activism. These conversations give you an inside look at how collaboration between science and community is transforming lives, challenging systems, and creating solutions that can change the world. In this episode, I'll be speaking to Dr. Betty Mwesigwa, Makerere University's Walter Reed Program's Deputy Executive Director. Dr. Betty Mwesigwa is the Deputy Executive Director at the Makerere University Walter Reed Project in Kampala, Uganda, a Ugandan medical doctor with a bachelor's degree in medicine and surgery from Makerere University and a Master of Science degree in clinical trials from the University of London and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She has over 10 years of working experience in infectious diseases, clinical research, has been involved with HIV care and management, HIV prevention, remission, and cure research, including an HIV therapeutic monoclonal antibody trial and several HIV longitudinal prospective cohort studies. In the last few years, she's been involved in the conduct of early phase Ebola vaccine trials and has been the principal investigator of 2 Ebola vaccine trials, testing regimes of Ebola vaccine candidates targeting the Zaire and Sudan strains of the virus. Comrade Betty, you've risen through the ranks at MUWRP, of course, as from clinical research manager, sub-investigator, principal investigator, and today you're the Deputy Executive Director for the Makerere University Walter Reed Project, where you oversee the scientific and research strategy. You've had 9 years working in the pharmaceutical sector. We're certainly going to chat a bit more about that. And so that's a really interesting mix of skills, experience, academia, and background that really has brought us to this place today in the capacity in which we speak to you as the co-principal investigator of the Brilliant Consortium, 5-year partnership with the United States Agency for International Development in PEPFAR to really reignite Africa's imagination, hopes, aspirations around finally bringing an end to HIV and certainly allowing a space to be filled, a long-term gap, where previously the discussions, the political agenda, the science, the research was very white, it was very exclusive. You certainly embody a lot of what Brilliant aims to achieve in that putting Black African scientists and researchers in the true driving seat with meaningful power to shape the responses to some of the diseases that really afflict us the most. Dr. Betty, you're very, very welcome today, and we look forward to talking to you over the next hour.
Thank you so much, Tian. That's definitely a very kind introduction, and it's very exciting to be speaking with you. And I also want to thank you and your team for all the energy you bring to the consortium. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. So Betty, you're no stranger to clinical trials, but explain to us how this thing called Brilliant is going to work. We've been steering clear of language and words like experiment, discovery, because of course we keep on wanting to assure communities that clinical trials, wherever they happen, are well thought out, they're safe, the scientists and researchers have the best intentions at heart. But in the context of Brilliant, which of course is very new for many of us, which in some instances describes itself as experimental, as discovery, what message do you have to communities to describe this thing called Brilliant that they might not have come across before? What is the key definition that you would want communities to know about discovery medicine or experimental medicine?
As you've said for a long time, scientists want to make sure that everything they do takes care of the safety of the people that participate in the research. That helps us to advance medicine, but also everything else we need for human care in the fight against infectious diseases or other ailments as well. So it could be clinical devices, it could be medications, it could be vaccines for prevention. Over the last 40 years, for HIV, scientists and researchers and communities, many people have been working very, very hard to try and find an HIV vaccine, and we still have not got any. And in this recent time, we actually don't have any products that are near testing for efficacy, meaning ready to get to the market. But along the way, we have learned so much about the virus itself and about the vaccines and the potential for the body to fight the virus and what potentially could work. So we now back to the drawing board. Many groups are back to the drawing board to find innovative science, innovative products that we could take into the pipeline for testing for an HIV vaccine. So what Brilliant is doing is discovery medicine or experimental medicine. What that means is that we are going to be looking to test the science as focus, as opposed to testing products. We need to test the science and test concepts and ideas, or what in science we call hypotheses, or develop new ones. And that's where the discovery portion of things is. It is more about understanding, going to the lab, going to understand the science, as opposed to we have a product that we're ready to take through human development. So the experimental products, experimental science is really dealing with advancing the science, the concepts, the ideas. For this kind of work, we do need a very small group of people because it helps us, we're really looking at the science. Small group of people will want to do a lot more biological sampling because we want to have as much information as we want from the blood, from any tissues, from the people themselves clinically. And therefore try and do everything we can to understand what new things we need to do to develop the products. So for the communities, what I want them to know is that Brilliant is going to be doing experimental or discovery medicine, where we will be trying to find innovative products that help us find innovative ways of developing HIV vaccines.
Thank you so much. I think that is such a wonderful way to describe it. You know, you're one of the last people that we're speaking to as part of this podcast series, and I don't think I've heard it described so clearly before in an easy to understand way that really Brilliant is about testing science and ideas before products. And so that's a really, really interesting insight. But, you know, as you were painting that picture and describing our pathway and how we got here, I think a very common question, which undoubtedly I'm sure you've had to answer hundreds of times now, is, you know, we saw COVID, we saw the devastating effects of COVID, and certainly, you know, from some of your work in Ebola, you would know that context. But the persistent question is, what is taking scientists and researchers so long? What is taking us so long? The millions of dollars being invested, the political will, the multi-country studies, the thousands of people who are taking part in trials. What is taking us so long to find this vaccine? Why has it taken us so long?
It is very pertinent, and the communities are saying, for everything else, the vaccines have come quick, the medicines have come quick, what is taking long? Very pertinent. However, I think the big problem we have is we have this very minute virus that is absolutely wise, extremely clever. And because of that attribute, the HIV virus is continuously changing. And we have many subtypes of the virus across the globe. Some subtypes more prominent in some areas of the world than others. I'll give you an example. We have HIV type 1, then we have HIV type 2, then under HIV type 1, which is the more common one, we have subtypes M, N, O, and others. And then even within those subtypes, we have many, many other subtypes. So as opposed to many of the other infections, HIV has been difficult to tackle because it is too varied. And we also know that as it tries to help itself to survive within the human body, it makes so many babies, replicates a lot, makes so many babies at any one time. It's not like human beings who give birth to one baby at a time. It gives birth to millions of babies at any time. And because it's replicating or making new copies of itself many at a time, it has a tendency to make mistakes. So in that process of making itself, it changes. So while you're making a product, targeting one type or a type you have learned about, in the next 1 year or two, you're dealing with a completely different type of virus because of all the changes that have happened to the original one. Even within an individual, you get infected with one type, and by next 3-4 months, the type that infected you is no longer the type you're finding in the body. So that has been a real challenge. I can assure you there's been lots of investments into HIV, more than anything else we have ever had. But it is a very tiny but extremely wise. It evades the immune system that's supposed to be getting rid of it. It hides in places very far. And we're still trying to understand when it hides, what keeps it there? What keeps it there? And why, what can we do to ensure it doesn't get there at all? Because if we can get it out of those hiding places, then maybe we can work on it. But it gets into those places and gets in very quickly. It integrates within the human genome itself. That's also a problem, because then it uses, it is a parasite. It uses the human structure to actually help it to make itself. And while you're trying to find it, you don't want to damage the human structures themselves. So the problem we're having is we're dealing with a very, very wise virus, very different from all others that we have seen. And we have had to be very, very patient, and we continue to be patient. But I think a lot has been learned, and we continue to be hopeful that soon or later we will find something that works for us.
Researchers and scientists, certainly from Uganda, are certainly constantly, setting the bar and leading us in terms of the work that you do. But when you look at, some of your work in trials aimed at providing solutions to adolescent girls and young women in terms of prevention, et cetera, when we look back at, the microbicide gel, and you look at the vaginal ring, and now you look at, something as groundbreaking as lenacapavir, it's receiving worldwide acclaim. For those listening in, we know that this is 2 jabs a year, 100% effective at prevention. So you see all of these amazing technologies coming out. None of these technologies, of course, would have been possible without communities, without community participation in many cases. And so you see all of these things happening. But then, of course, you also see the role of pharma. And you see what happens when communities stand up and say, we want to be part of this research. We need the fruits of this research. But of course, despite all the praise around lenacapavir, we're now in a position that, of course, those countries and those communities that made this groundbreaking technology possible now don't have access to the product. And we've seen this time and time and time again. And so what would be your message to communities who are fatigued, who are tired, but who are also not seeing the fruits of the research that they help make possible? Of course, as a second part of the question, which we can come to, is then around the questions of Brilliant. Is it too early to discuss access in the context of Brilliant? But before we get there, could you just speak a bit to communities around them asking, why should we support the next trial, whether it's Brilliant or any other clinical trial? Because the evidence is very much there that communities are not always accessing the fruits of that research.
But in my opinion, it is a two-edged sword. And I stand with the communities, and as a scientist, I also understand the challenges that the developers probably have to overcome to help to get the right products ahead. It is important to have communities behind every single discovery, because without testing these discoveries in humans, they're not going anywhere. We will never know if they work or not. So we do need those communities. And we're so grateful for so many years of community involvement, the people that have come forward to support product development. We're talking about HIV now, but there's multitudes of illnesses out there, and without which, if communities didn't participate or offer themselves, we'll probably not have them. I say two-edged sword because I think part of it is that our countries have failed us as communities. We're coming slow on setting the right regulations, especially in trying to fight for access and ensuring that once communities have participated in research, access is guaranteed. I think our countries need to stand up and get stronger regulations, or else only those countries that have those regulations should be allowed to participate. It is not fair at all that after participation we have to beg for access for products, for the teams, for the groups that really need them. When we speak about HIV, for example, we're saying Sub-Saharan Africa is most hit, Sub-Saharan Africa has most of them. So all these trials have to be done in Sub-Saharan Africa because we're the ones who need the vaccines most. And then when the vaccines appear, and then we have to come back to the table to beg. I think that is not right. So I think as a global community, we need to get into the partnerships where access is discussed upfront, and not even just discussed, but guaranteed upfront. But that is going to require all of us, researchers, governments, as well as the communities. It is great that communities are making noise about it. We need that noise. Scientists and researchers need to make more noise, especially at the point in time when we are agreeing to participate in these studies. But also the governments need to come in and enforce this noise with some form of regulations that are going to support the communities. We understand where the pharmaceutical companies are coming from. They need to make the best of their investments, but they also need to remember that without these communities that are participating, they really don't have products. So we should have some equal form of fair partnership in accessing the products. Is it too early for Brilliant to start discussing access? Probably yes, because for experimental products, we are really looking at the science. When we get to that point in time where we want our products to be, tested for efficacy, taken through the pipeline for licensure, we are clear that the science we have looked at works. We have developed or manufactured products that we want to take through the pipeline towards licensure. That is the point in time we need to start discussing access as early as the phase 1 trials for those products. That is the time to discuss access for those products. But during the early phases of science and basic science, maybe that's not, because we really don't know what will work at that point in time.
This is the Brilliant series of podcasts, brought to you by the Consortium's Community Engagement and Advocacy Workstream, introducing you to the scientists, researchers, and community activists at the center of HIV vaccine discovery. Today, I'm speaking to the Deputy Executive Director of Makerere University's Walter Reed Program in Kampala, Dr. Betty Mwesigwa. You spent nearly a decade in pharma. What would you say is one of the most profound lessons that you took from that nearly decade, and has made you a better scientist, a better researcher in your current role?
I think for me it was very, very important to understand the entire cascade of product development. When you're a researcher, you're really on one end of it. And then as the product developer, there's a whole world about this product. As a researcher, I sit at my research clinic, I receive these products, I receive all the information about the products. I don't necessarily know much more about what else is happening. But at the pharmaceutical end of things, so having done the research clinical trial aspects, understand what it takes to recruit participants in the trial, look after them, test whether the product works, safety and immunogenicity. But from a pharmaceutical side of things, it goes all the way from the basic science to the product manufacturing, to the licensing of requirements and stringent processes you have to go through to get the product on the market, to the billions of dollars you need to actually develop a product. Not just the clinical trial aspect is actually one very small part of it. And then, you get the product on the market, you continue to test to check whether it works the way you wanted it to work, and the regulations are really tight. And then, obviously, there's the business angle of it. You have put in too much, you need to ensure you get it back. So the patenting and all that kind of thing. So for me, having that full picture is great. So sometimes how am I using that information? Right now, as we sit with the research teams, I have a full picture, a picture they probably don't have. So I understand where the sponsor comes from, where the developer comes from, and I'm able to pass that information to ensuring that as we run the trials, it is critical that the data is accurate and the data can be trusted to be utilized. Because at the end of the day, if this product gets to the market, because this developer wants it to get to the market, the human beings that are going to receive it thereafter are going to rely on the data we're giving them. So I think that broadening of my mind was really, really critical. And I think it would also be very, very helpful from the negotiation side of things. I understand why we need to have the products coming back to us, have that access, because I also understand that the pharmaceutical companies will be looking to make money out of it. So we can't just be doing the hard work of receiving the experimental products and not having anything to do with the actual licensed product or ease of having it. So that's what I can share.
So, Dr. Betty, why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? I am a trained medical doctor, and the passion there was to really care for sick people. Okay. I ended up doing much less clinical work and more research because of the understanding that once we do have lots of needs as an African population, millions, prevention, care and treatment, but all this requires us to get involved with innovation. It's research that brings new things to the market. It's research that looks to see what we are doing every day. Is it working? Or is it giving us? So having that inquisitive mind of asking questions, why are we doing what we're doing? Can we do more? Can we do it better? I think that mindset, looking for the answers to help our population. But also the thought process of everything we use actually comes in from somewhere else. As African scientists, we have not had lots of opportunities to show how great our own minds are or what we're able to do because of the limited resources and capacity we have on the continent. So with all the funding that comes in from the Western world, you get to see or get to participate in the real science as opposed to just checking on your patients at the clinic. So that is also exciting. And now Brilliant is even making it better. Very, very good, because Brilliant is putting African scientists at the forefront. Brilliant is saying the communities need to develop these vaccines for themselves. And so this is even a notch higher, because previously you'd wait for the products to come to you. Now they're saying, get your hands dirty. Come on, bring your mind, bring your very best, sit at the table with all these great people and the communities and make a product that is going to work, not just for Africa, but for the globe. Now, that is extremely, extremely exciting. So I enjoy doing the research I do, and I really, really hope that one day African scientists will develop an HIV vaccine that will work for the globe.
Absolutely. And you spoke about, bring your very best. And of course, although you will fight it and be very humble, are certainly counted amongst those best. What would you tell a 12-year-old Betty?
If I could tell anybody anything, it is step out. Don't sit in that corner and think things are going to come. You need to step out. And when you put your first foot out, you're going to see the part of the world you're not seeing just because you seated back. So step out and allow in as much as you can take for you to be able to give your very best. So you will only see your potential once you allow yourself to step out. So in my culture, in our Ugandan culture, speaking out and speaking up are not a normal tradition. So we brought up to listen and do as we are told, not to question. But growing up and learning and interacting with many societies, I want to tell everybody just to give yourself the liberty to ask and speak. You don't have to be rude, you just have to speak. So ask the question, step out, agree to take on the challenges, because that in there lies the lessons and the science, and eventually the successes that we all want to celebrate. So step out.
It's very small, but it's also very big. That first step, I think we can all recall when we were young, activists even, just that first moment when you stand up to the mic, you're about to ask your first question, all of the scientists are glaring at you, they've got PhDs, they're on a panel, you have community experience, which of course is always devalued and dismissed, and never taken as data, which is why we fight to say our stories are our data. But it's just so, such a powerful call from you that, even when you feel like you are choking, even when your voice is trembling, just take that first step and the rest really comes so much easier. Could you tell us a bit then about your role in Brilliant, and what does a day in the life of Betty, the Brilliant co-PI, look like?
Okay, so Brilliant, I am one of the co-PIs. So I'm one of those African scientists leading the consortium. And I want to say that is something I greatly celebrate. Something that didn't come very easy because it was very, very competitive. But I'm very grateful to all the teams that we worked with to be able to get to win the award for Brilliant, because Brilliant has a lot for us as scientists and Africans. So as co-PI, of course, I am on the senior management team of the consortium, but also bring together the big part of the East African groups that are part of the consortium to ensure that we make our contribution to the consortium. I also sit on the executive committee and therefore also present to the scientific advisory group of the consortium. And the goal is to work very collaboratively in a very open-minded space, knowing very well that we all have something great to bring to the table, but also something great to take away as individuals, but also as groups or as sites, but inevitably as a continent, because ultimately, whatever we do as part of this consortium, working with other consortia like Advance, working with developers, Western or African, and working with the individuals in the communities, those people that are going to be speaking to us and telling us, what it is they want this vaccine to do, or what it is they want the vaccine to how they want us to do the work we do. All have something great to bring to the table. So hopefully we can all work together openly, collaboratively, and develop each other as individuals, as groups, but also make the continent proud.
It's been 1 year, just over 1 year and 2 months now since the announcement was made of the partnership. What is your takeaway from this first year of Brilliant?
I think Brilliant has been fantastic. Setting up a consortium from scratch, my lesson has been that it is not easy feat. Getting people from different countries, different mindsets, different desires, different opinions to come together and start working together and actually advance the goals and objectives of the consortium, for me, has been extremely rewarding. Not easy, it's not perfect, but I can't say any of us could have done it any differently at this point in time. Because for the last 1 year, we've had to plan and come up with work plans and get those funding agreements moving, plan a whole trial, including writing a protocol and taking it through regulatory approvals. That is extreme. I'm used to seeing protocols started and we need 2 years plus just working on one protocol to get it through the systems before we can even start regulatory approvals. So we still have a long way to go. It's been 1 year, yeah? But I think for the 1 year, it's been great. Brilliant puts communities at the center. I hope you feel it, Tian. We really are hoping that we're not just saying that community will be at the center and travels this journey with us at the center of this, of everything that we do. So we commend you for everything that we've seen all those posters and beautiful things coming out. Now these podcasts allowing us to speak to the communities and people about the work we're doing and our passion for ensuring that we do it right. So that at the end of the day, we can get that vaccine. So celebrating 1 year, 2 months, I think it's been phenomenal. And there's still a lot we need to do to get everybody involved, to get everybody's ideas taken into consideration. But that's work in progress. Considering we're all at different levels of our scientific journeys and research journeys, and many things are new to many of us. We just have to continuously step out, and ask those questions and be at the table, do our part. And I think by the time we close the 5 years, we shall be a great team together.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's really great insights. And thank you for your encouraging words. It's certainly a privilege, to be part of a community team within the scientific consortium. We certainly have never seen a consortium that has been established like this, with community across all decision-making bodies, and having the challenging but eventually rewarding work of ensuring that we take the scientific leadership along with us. So really looking forward to the next 5 years. Is there any final message, Dr. Betty, that you would like to share with communities and those who are listening in?
Yes, thank you. I want to let the communities know that we can no longer, as scientists, walk alone, because communities have been very clear with us. We don't want you to impose your things on us. We want to be part of the journey. And that makes a lot of sense. Learning from the Ebola vaccine trials and vaccines and Ebola response activities, communities chase clinicians away. They said to the Ministry of Health, who are you? Where have you been all these years? Why are you telling us now? So we don't want to lose the opportunity now. So we're saying we want to work with the communities, and we pray and hope that the communities will come with us, because they have a lot to teach us. And we thank you, Tian, and your team so much for agreeing to take that seat. It is a hot seat, I think, trying to make sure communities understand the scientists and that the scientists understand the communities. It cannot be that easy, but we thank you for taking on the challenge, and we're excited about having the community at the center and working along with us. And when we find that vaccine, which we are going to be looking very hard for, we hope we will hold hands with the community and tell everybody we did it together. And here we are, and we're here for you.
Thank you so much. I think the work is made a lot easier for those listening in. Of course, the African Alliance co-leads this work stream with Dr. Betty's sidekick and partner in advocacy and communities first, Stephen Mugamba from MUWRP, and Martha Tolana from GALS in Zimbabwe. Dr. Betty, you've given us a lot to think about, a lot to reflect on, but also a lot to be very proud of. And as we take away your message of step up, step up, step up over the next 4 years, we hope that you too feel seen, feel celebrated, feel honored as a Black African woman at the helm of this HIV vaccine discovery effort, and know that, as Dr. Angelo would say, you come as one, but you know that you stand as 10,000. Thank you so much, Dr. Betty, for speaking to us. You've been listening to the African Alliance podcast, the Brilliant series, bringing you these incredible stories of passion, innovation, and change that take us a step closer to an HIV vaccine. We're constantly inspired by the work being done by our guests, and I hope you are too. The work doesn't stop here. There's always more to learn, more to do, and more to connect with. Stay curious, stay engaged, and we'll be back soon with another inspiring episode, from pioneering scientific research to impactful community activism. The individuals we feature on this show are not just changing their fields, they're shaping the future. To learn more about the Brilliant Consortium and how you can get involved, visit africanalliance.org.za and follow us on social media. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the podcast so more people can hear these powerful stories.